We're now going to hear from a Pathways to Teaching program from the state of Georgia with Evelyn Dandy and Elijah West.
Good morning. My name is Elijah West Jr. 5 years ago, I was stuck. I loved kids, but I was working 3 jobs and barely making ends meet. I needed to go back to college to become a certified teacher, but I didn't have money for tuition. It looked like I was going to have a long career as a paraprofessional, always scraping to be able to support my family. I was going to do some good for children, but I was not going to be able to devote my full attention to changing lives. I hardly had enough time for my own family. Then came the Pathways to Teaching program. I survived all these intense interviews, and I woke up to find myself in the midst of a like-minded group of scholars. Many of us were nervous about whether we could do the work, but the program provided tutors, and they provided us with attitude. Pretty soon we found out we could succeed if we only worked hard at it. With the help of the tutors and other support systems that Pathways had in place, I excelled in the classroom. Then, with the added responsibility of being a teacher, I found I had all kinds of opportunities to change lives. My school took advantage of my background and assigned me to work with a group of at-risk African-American males. And I have made a difference. I've tried to find ways to make my boys a part of the school community. I get them together on weekends to clean the school grounds and to clean corners in the local neighborhood. I want them to know that it feels good to serve. Rashid, once a troubled student, is now proud to have designed the flag that flies over his school. He and Michael earned high honor roll status for the very first time. Suspensions in the class dropped 70%, and daily attendance increased from 80% to 94%. The great thing about the program is that its impact is much bigger than just me. It's bigger than what I can do with my students. Down the hall from me is a teacher named Katherine Moore. She too is a Pathways scholar. We push one another. I watch and admire her as she gives up her lunch period to teach her children manners. She tells me she notices how often I'm out in the neighborhood after school doing my part to touch lives. Together we make each other better teachers. And it's not just us. There's a group of 39 Pathways graduates, most of us teachers of color, now teaching in Savannah schools. We all know one another, we trade tips, we push one another. In a few years, I truly believe we will be the leaders in our school system. With the help of the Pathways program, we have a core group in place who are on their way to building a new, improved school system for children who live in the neighborhoods where we grow up. It makes me proud to be a Pathways scholar, and it makes me want to share the word that Pathways is indeed helping inner city children to make their lives better.
I'm so proud of Elijah West, but you know, his story is not unique. There are 23 other black men in our program, and all our children need role models like them. What makes Pathways' success even more impressive when you look at what is happening other places in the country? The number of minority teachers is plummeting. Some say we need as many as 350,000 inner city teachers in the next 5 years. Where will the teachers come from? We truly have a national model that will help answer that question. We take people we know have a passion for kids and we make them teachers. How do we know they have a passion for kids? We draw our applicants from our school's support staff. We've seen them work with children successfully for years. And while they cannot afford the $3,500 it takes to become certified, they have the intelligence, the heart, and the determination to change lives. How do we know our program is working? We have plenty of evidence, anecdotal and statistical. Our students are passing their certification exams. Our pass rate is 95%. Our students are staying and teaching. We retain 93% of our first-year teachers. 6 of the scholars have won Distinguished Teaching Awards for their schools. Scholars and their students have higher attendance rate than their classes in their schools and the entire district. We also know our program is working because it's changing the way our university does business. The number of minority students is up from 18% in 1991 to 27% in 1996. Scholars are outperforming other students. The average GPA of our 39 graduates is 3.03. The Board of Regents has named us one of the very best programs in the state for student retention. People can replicate what we're doing. They need a standardized application process, a close relationship with the school district, payment of 80% tuition, and the offering of service to Pathways scholars. What our model can show America is that we don't have to go out of the inner cities to find effective teachers. There are thousands of paraprofessionals just like Elijah, just waiting to have their opportunity to show their potential. And through the support we give them, they will give their students hope. They'll give their students dreams. They'll change their students' lives.
Thank you. Questions? Max?
Would you explain a little more how you work with local principals and get them to allow people who are paraprofessionals to take time off and to be gone and probably to, you know, leave them short in their local operation?
We have a win-win situation. What we've done is we've promised principals that we will replace those paraprofessionals who are out for that day on Friday, that they come on campus and do work. And in turn, we get senior students at Armstrong, senior teacher education majors, and they go and become substitutes for those paraprofessionals who are off. That's win-win because the principals don't have money to pay for substitutes, and that we are able to get our seniors into real classrooms doing real things and still give them a little bit of money. We pay them $25 a day to do that.
Other questions here? And Mr. West, by the way, I want to thank you for coming here. It's helpful to see people in the flesh and blood who are actually products of these programs. I'm curious about what people who come out of the program actually teach. What level do they teach on? What kind of schools do they teach in?
Presently, the school that I'm teaching at, there are 5 pathways to teaching graduates. I'm a 5th grade teacher. The program that I'm presently working with is a program designed for at-risk males. It's called the Heritage Immersion program. This program takes kids that are having problems with attendance, suspensions, low self-esteem, and what I do is I teach my curriculum, which is it's designed to be in line with state regulations, but I teach it from a cultural aspect. And what I do is a lot of after-school, weekend type activities to show these kids that I'm not just a teacher, but I'm also concerned as a person about how they can shape themselves up within their homes, within their communities.
Can you address the issue? I know this is very sensitive, but in many of our schools around the country, particularly inner city schools, a growing proportion of minority students face a growing white teacher group. And how much difference do you think it makes within that context to have larger proportions of teachers who represent those minorities?
It makes a tremendous difference. A child can go through school, grade 1 to 12, without having a teacher from his own community. And knowing that you can go that far through school and never have a person who watches the same television programs, who enjoys the same music, who has the same role models, who worships the same kind of worship service, who loves the same kinds of foods, to be able to identify with a person who's teaching you also this information is very powerful.
Barbara Roberts?
I'm thinking about the preparation phase of this for people studying to become teachers. If you looked at this and tried to replicate it across the nation, are there roadblocks? Are there hurdles to making this transformation, allowing this program to take place as you go from state to state in terms of not just the idea of replicability, but the legal aspect of how teacher selection is made and teacher standards are met across the country?
There's a great deal of change right now in colleges of education. And clearly they're probably the last bastion of change. They're the most difficult to change. And I can give you an example of the college where I teach. I had to convince, number one, the administration that this had to be done. The Board of Regents had said, you have a high loss of students. Many of your students don't come back, especially your minority students. We had to deal with that. We also had to deal one by one with professors who were worried that we would change standards when we brought minorities in. And I think you have to dialogue individually with them. I can take one for an example. One of the history professors, we do a joint supervision of a student teacher. And when I first told him about the idea of, could we jointly supervise that student teacher, he said, I've never done that. He's been at the university for 27 years. And I said, well, let's talk about it. And we talked about it, and this was 3 years ago. Now he comes and sits in my office, and I go and sit with him, and we talk about the content, the history, and we talk about the process. And he's worried about the content, and I'm worried about the process. So one by one, it takes a while, but through dialogue and through collaboration, it can work.
Dot Ryden.
Yes, I understand your program attracts a great deal of outside financial support, outside of the state system. Through the years, has that amount of state support remained about the same proportionally, or has it increased, or has it decreased? What would you anticipate?
It's starting to increase. As we're able to draw more monies and see that our program is working, it's really starting to increase.
Barbara, I'm not sure. Did I cut you off? Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I really did have a follow-up. I guess the rest of the question I was asking, and I probably didn't ask it clearly, as state legislative assemblies and state boards of education and teachers and standards practices acts and all those things that make up the legality of the teaching profession from state to state, did you have to make changes in those arenas in your state, and do you think that would be a difficulty if you were trying to apply this standard across the nation and the process across the nation?
Yes, we did have to suggest changes, and I think very slowly those changes are happening, but they're coming through with collaboration and with the talk that we're doing with the legislators. And once we're able to convince them that what we're doing will work, then they have to really be able to see it. Then they're starting to make changes too, and starting to listen to us more.